Way to steal my friggin'
That's what
line.
you say every single time.
I know, it's just how the podcast starts. Oh my goodness. Well, now that that's stolen and I'm thrown off my groove. This week's episode of the podcast is the Poisonwood Bible. And I am excited to have you on the podcast. I'm a little bit worried.
Why?
Because you always are so worried what people think about what you say. Mm-hmm. And every night after we record an episode, you're like, did I say anything dumb? And this book covers, I don't know how to say it, some touchy material is the way that I'd maybe say it. I mean, it covers religion. And religion is always a touchy topic. And so I'm interested to see how much you actually open up on this episode, because there's a lot that could be talked about, but I'm interested to see how much you actually let yourself talk.
Well, we'll see.
But I am excited to have you on the podcast. You are the last person to come in the studio for an episode. Ever since we started doing remote episodes, everybody's like, I'll just do remote. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a bummer because I do like sitting across from people, and they're so much easier to edit the in-person ones than the remote ones, because the remote ones I'm having to like clip together a bunch of different stuff, and it's the worst. So this is at least easier. So thanks for coming on. To start off this episode of the podcast, I have been giving a quick description of every episode. I'm doing so much better with these descriptions. No, I'm going to read it.
Please just read it.
I'm going to read it because I'm doing better, and I'm fairly certain this one is one paragraph long.
Okay.
I can do it. Do you trust me?
Can I just read it?
Oh my goodness. Here we go. If I can't get through it the first time, you can read it. I'm practicing my reading skills. Oh. Isn't that great? Mm-hmm. All right. The Poisonwood Bible is a story told by the wife and $4. Go ahead. It's your turn. What the heck?
All right.
Oh, that was embarrassing. I couldn't even get through the first freaking sentence.
The Poisonwood Bible is a story told by the wife and 4 daughters of Nathan Price, a fierce evangelical.
Oh my goodness. And you were giving me crap.
Oh my God.
All right. My turn.
Okay, let me start it.
It's my turn. All right, here we go. The Poisonwood Bible is a story told by the wife of $4. I don't know why that word is giving me so much trouble. Jeez.
I have to cut this out.
This is bad. All right.
Okay.
You've got this. Oh my goodness. This is bad. This is bad. Okay. Go for it. Okay, stop laughing. We got to get through this. This is the description. This should be like the easiest part. It's literally written out there. It's one paragraph. It's the easiest description we've had on the podcast in months. Most of them are like 4 paragraphs long.
Okay.
All right, you got this.
The Poisonwood Bible is a story told by the wife and 4 daughters of Nathan Price, a fierce evangelical Baptist who takes his family and mission to the Belgian Congo in 1959. They carry with them everything they believe they will need from home, but soon find that all of it, from garden seats to scripture, is calamitously transformed on African soil. What follows is a suspenseful epic of one family's tragic undoing and remarkable reconstruction over the course of 3 decades in post-colonial Africa.
Okay, perfect. And this book is written by Barbara
Kingsolver,
which I didn't realize was such a big deal. Mm-hmm. She actually wrote another book that we're reading this year on the podcast, which was
Demon Copperhead.
I didn't know that was the same person. Mm-hmm. So apparently she's a pretty big deal. This book won, or was runner-up in the Pulitzer Prize back in 1999. And
is that when it came out?
It came out in 98.
Oh, wow.
It's an old book. Like way older than I thought. How old were you?
1. I was born in 97.
Holy cow. Yeah, so it came out in 98, Pulitzer Prize finalist for 99. And then Demon Copperhead came out in 2022 and was 2023's Pulitzer Prize winner. So she finally did get a Pulitzer Prize this last year, but she's got, quite a bit of books in here. And I wanted to read a little bit about Miss Kingsolver, which is a pretty dope name, honestly. And just about kind of her journey as, writing this book. I think it gives a little bit of insight into, I don't know, some of the tones and themes of the book. So when she grew up, her dad was a physician, and they did like Doctors Without Borders or something. I mean, I don't think it was called Doctors Without Borders back in the day, because it was in 1963, but they would travel all over the world, and he would be kind of like a Doctors Without Borders, like a poor person, physician, and for people with extreme need. One of the places that she was able to visit in 63 was the Republic of the Congo. And that's kind of what spurred her love for that area. And she always knew that she wanted something to do with the Congo back then. And so that's kind of what ties her to that area. And a lot of what she pulls from the book is actually from her own personal, not experiences as far as the story is told, but elements of, the snakes, the ants, the thatched roofs, like all of those, like the poverty, the people, is from her experience. The actual story from the Poisonwood Bible is not a true story at all. So, but that's where she kind of got her ideas and the background for this book. Interesting. I always think it's fun when people have completely different careers and then fall into writing. So she was originally going to DePaul, I don't know how to say that, University in Indiana, on a piano scholarship.
Oh, wow.
So she was a pianist, and then changed her major to biology because she thought, maybe I can get a job with a biology major, not a piano degree. Then worked for a couple of years at the University of Arizona Medical School in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, and then eventually became a grad student in that. And then a couple of years after that, decided that she just wanted to write. So she became a freelance writer out of nowhere and walked away from her job and everything and became a full-time freelancer. She earned about $6,000 the first year that she was a freelancer, and said that she just completely fell in love with it and wanted to do that full-time. So she left everything. And then for her first book, she actually wrote it while she was pregnant for the first time. She couldn't sleep. She had insomnia.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, which you have definitely had that.
And that with our second.
Yep.
I did not write a book.
You did not write a book. So she and her husband were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and she would go into the closet and would turn on the light in the closet so that her husband could sleep. And she wrote an entire book during that pregnancy. Dang. That was her first book. And just before the birth of her first child, Camille, in 1987, which again, this is something you can relate to, she wanted to clean the entire house and went insane with cleaning. And during that time, she decided that she was getting rid of all of these pages one way or the other. She said it was either going to the trash can or to a publisher. So she decided to stick a sticky note on it. The sticky note said, "I'm sorry, you probably don't want this. I think it's a novel." Shipped it in to to a publisher in New York, and it became her first book.
Wow.
I know, isn't that crazy? And then ever since then, she's just been a writer.
That's awesome.
And she's written a ton of short stories, a ton of books. Did not get the exact number, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I always love when people have like career changes and do something really cool, especially later in life. I mean, I don't think she was super later in life because she was, I don't know. If I had to guess, college,
late 20s.
Yeah. Then she went to a master's program, worked for a couple of
30s.
years. Yeah. So late 20s would be, my guess, first child. Late 20s, deciding to pursue a career in writing. I always think that's so cool. Like you can do anything you want, anytime you want. Complete side story to this. I was also listening to a podcast the other day about, I can't remember who. I think it was Joe Rogan and I think it was a comedian. I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was Andrew Santino. No. Just kidding. Andrew Schultz. Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan. This is a complete tangent. But yeah, they were talking again about people who start careers later in life. And there were quite a few people that they mentioned that all started their dream careers in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s. I think one of the ones they mentioned was like Morgan Freeman didn't start acting until he was like way later in life. I know, kind of interesting. So it's never too late to start a podcast, become a podcaster. Just kidding. All right. Anything to say to that?
No.
You've been awfully quiet.
Nothing
to add so far?
I didn't write a book.
Do any of this? Didn't write a book with your insomnia with your first pregnancy? To each their own, I guess.
I don't know what I did.
You laid there and got really frustrated. And then you would wait for me to wake up, and then you would tell me how mad you were that you couldn't sleep. Or you would wake me up. Yeah. And be like, I can't sleep. And I'd be like, I'm trying to sleep. So yeah, that's usually what happens. And then I think you rewatched like every television show that you've ever watched.
But whatever.
So that's good. One of the suggestions. So this book takes place in, I don't know, the Republic of the Congo. What was it called when you were in high school?
I don't know.
You don't?
I don't know. I read this in high school for AP literature.
Really? Really?
Well, yeah, she had a list of books you could read from and you could write like a short essay to get extra credit. So guess how many of them I read?
All of them.
I'm an eldest daughter. So.
Yes.
A lot of them.
Nice.
And this was one of them.
I remember being really confused as to what the name of this country was. Always. Because it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
And then...
Is it Zaire right now?
No.
What's not? What is it right now?
Now it's the Democratic Republic of the Congo again.
Oh. Okay.
So it's bounced.
I think that's what it was called when I was in high school.
So, yeah, I mean, it was all over the place. Because I remember when it was called Zaire. And I
don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
You know how bad I am at geography.
Yeah. My mom, so I was homeschooled in middle school. Just from, well, I guess a little bit more than middle school. I was homeschooled from 5th grade through 8th grade. 5th grade? Yeah. 5th grade through 8th grade. And one of the things that we did in homeschool is we had to memorize the entire globe countries. Dang. So we had to, every single country in the entire world, we had to
watch Gilmore Girls.
Yes, that and watch Gilmore Girls. Those were some of our yes, things that we had to do. And I remember always being so confused with this country because half of the books that I read were Zaire and half of them were Democratic Republic of Congo. And now, finally, at 30 years old, I understand why.
Yeah, it's a tumultuous history.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, a couple fun facts. So, this book takes place in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Actually, it takes place in a bunch of different places. It takes place in Belgian Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Zaire, and then Democratic Republic of the Congo again, because this book spans like 30 years. But just a couple quick facts about the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You thought it would be really interesting to kind of do some history about the area to start off. And so the DRC is the second largest country in Africa. Very interesting. It's the 11th largest country in the world. And with a population of 105 million currently, the Democratic Republic of Congo is the most populous francophone country in the world, meaning French-speaking country in the world. So for reference, France has 68 million people in it, and it has a bigger population of French-speaking people than the country of France, which is crazy. And then the Democratic Republic of the Congo is named after the Congo River, which flows through the country. The Congo River is the world's deepest river and the world's third largest river by discharge, so by volume of water that it expels into the ocean. Following the Amazon River, the Ganges River, that's in Asia and Indonesia, or Asia and India, flows out of like Asia, India. And then third being the Congo. So huge river. So those are just some fun facts about the Congo. As far as the history of it, so this is crazy.
So it was owned by Belgium, right?
Well, before that, so apparently, there's been people in Congo. They found like barbed fishing spears or whatever that are estimated to be 60,000 years old. So, I mean, there have been people there forever. They were mostly just like indigenous people, kind of hunter-gatherer, like small societies and groups of people throughout, that populated most of Asia, but they made their way through the Congo and settled along the river. King Leopold II of Belgium, which is named pretty frequently in this book, actually, he acquired the rights to the Congo from, I don't even know who, but it was
probably England.
It said from colonial nations of Europe in 1885. So I don't know who that is. But it was actually his private property. It wasn't Belgium's property. It was King Leopold II's private property. And it was he named it the Congo Free State. And it was his. It was like as if he owned, it was like his backyard. Like it was his land, apparently.
His vacation home.
Yeah, his vacation home was the largest country in Africa. And what he did with it was he used it to produce rubber. So the automobile was coming up in the world. And as you can imagine, with the rise of the automobile, the need for rubber tires increased pretty significantly. And so he coerced the entire population into producing rubber. And he amassed a huge fortune through rubber sales off of the backs of Congolese people. And during his personal, it's not even a reign, while he owned the entire Congo and all the people there, he managed to kill 1/2 of the population in making rubber. And it wasn't just from labor. It was also from like smallpox and a bunch of other diseases. And he also ruled pretty hard with like an iron fist. He liked to cut people's limbs off if they didn't listen to him. So not the greatest guy. And at one point there was like some investigation into human rights violations. And eventually he had to give up his own personal playground backyard of the Congo.
He didn't just, I mean, this is what I gleaned from the book, which sometimes when it's a story, it's kind of hard to like know if you're, especially a story told through, at first they're children. It's like hard to know if you're getting the right information. But he didn't just have to like give it up immediately. He like, there was an agreement that after a certain number of years they would be free, right?
No. So he gave it up to Belgium.
Okay, that's what. And but then there was like an agreement that they would get to be free and like.
Yes. So then eventually Belgium had this agreement that they would leave at some point. And that ended up being in 1960. So in 1960 is when Belgium officially pulled out of the Congo.
And that's when this book takes place.
Yes, it takes place in that time. I want to say, so 1959 is when they go. So they go during Belgian Congo, and they see the transition from Belgian Congo to Democratic Republic of the Congo to Zaire and back to Democratic Republic of the Congo. But yeah, so it went from this guy's personal backyard to Belgium. Belgium basically used it for its resources, diamonds, minerals, still kind of rubber. But yeah, just basically pulled everything they could out of the country and then left. And let's see, what happened then was that Patrice Lumbamba, who's talked about in the book, and Joseph Kasavubu were elected as both prime minister and president. And that was when it was called the Democratic Republic of the Congo, because they became a democracy in which people would cast stones into their into bowls, and that would be carried upriver. And these were the two people that were elected. So eventually, as you can imagine, a country that was just thrust into a democracy with little to no training. Another thing that they talk a lot about in the book is that Belgium, in order to keep kind of its control over the people, like many kind of authoritarian powers, limit the amount of education that individuals from that country can have, because they don't want to, they don't want kind of insurrections and, uprisings spurred by educated individuals. So they left this country with little to no educated anybody, men, women, children, nobody. They gave this, this power over to this democracy. They elected these people. And then eventually these kind of sub-nations decided that they were seceding from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So there were, villages that decided, we don't need to be a part of the Congo. We've never been a part of the Congo ever. We're a village. Yeah. We're kind of separate from that anyway. We're just going to secede from there. And so Lumbamba decided that he needed some help, and the United States said, see you later, we're not helping. And so the people that stepped in were the Russians.
Yeah.
Or at that time, the Soviet Union. And as you can imagine, after the Soviet Union stepped in and helped kind of stabilize some of the region and prevent the secession of those groups, they started spreading communism. And that's when the United States was like, just kidding, we're coming back into the Congo because we don't like communism. We don't want communism to spread through Africa. And so after, in 1965, after, 5 years of being this early democracy, the United States, with like a CIA-backed coup, decided to assassinate the prime minister of the Congo and install
Eisenhower sent the order. Like, that was crazy.
Yeah, completely crazy that the CIA decided to get involved, and they decided to overthrow the existing government and install their own new leader, who was Mobutu, who was supposedly very anti-communist, which is why the U.S. liked him. Within 5 years of Mobutu being in power, he decided, see you later, democracy, I'm going to be essentially king. He got rid of all other parties within the Congo. He had the first direct presidential election, meaning that he was the only person that appeared on the ballot. He got rid of every other party, and all of the prime minister candidates were, and all of the elected officials were all from his party, no one else on the ballots. And essentially the democratic process came to an end then 5 years after it started, because the U.S. didn't like communism. And then that's when Mobutu changed the country's name to Zaire. He changed the name of the river to the Zaire River, and he was like, we're no longer the Democratic Republic of the Congo because I don't want anything to do with democracy. We're going to be Zaire. So that's what I remember it always being called, was Zaire, because that happened in 1970, and it was Zaire again until 2003.
I think I remember it as the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
No, it wasn't 2003. 1997. Yeah, 1997, I think is when it was. So that was the change. No, I don't know. I don't know. I have a bunch of different dates here, but essentially what happened is that Mobutu was really liked by the United States government, even though there was no democracy. And I thought that that's why the United States was getting involved everywhere, was to spread democracy. No democracy. Mobutu actually traveled to the United States. He met Nixon, Reagan, George H.W. Bush. He was like a super big ally to the United States until he was no longer necessary, which was when the Cold War ended. Once the Cold War ended and the threat of communism spreading throughout Africa, the United States was basically like, see you later. You can do your own thing. We're no longer going to be involved with Zaire. After that, in 1997, with the Rwandan genocide, there were forces from Rwanda and Uganda that had been expelled. They were, I can't remember, one side of that disagreement had been kind of pushed out of Rwanda and pushed into the Congo. And so there was like a group of foreign nationalists and people that decided that they wanted to overthrow the Congo, and they basically overthrew the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in 2001 or in 1997, that's when a leader named Kabila overthrew the government and renamed it. So that was 2001 or 1997. Sorry, 1997. 1997. I got it. 1997. It was renamed the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Kabila became the leader of the Congo. And in 2006, in 2001, he was assassinated. I mean, so after that, it gets like kind of crazy. I'm not going to keep diving into it because that's after that, the book, this is no longer when the book. So basically the book goes until Mobutu, I think. Like it talks about everything with.
If it was written in 98, then there's no way it could go past that.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. So by the time the book was written, it was still Zaire. And so, yeah, so that's as far as the book goes. After that, it's basically assassinations, overthrows, and then eventually in 2006, the first elections happened since 1960. So they went from 1960 elections, no elections until 2006. And then the first multi-party elections happened again in 2006. And then since then, there have been free elections in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Democratic Republic of the Congo. There have been some rockiness in there, but the latest election was in 2023. Or 2023, sorry, 2023, so 1 year ago, and they still are holding multi-party elections. So, back to democracy. But essentially, there was no democracy from 1960 to 2006.
And everything before then.
Yeah. So that's a really brief history of the Congo. A very crazy place. Something that, again, I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about a lot of places, and it's crazy to learn that through a book. But I thought this book did a really good job of kind of outlining the way that people would have felt throughout this time, especially like Congolese people. You know what I mean? Like I felt like it did a very good job of bringing to light that crazy change in history of being, you know, basically enslaved, but not really, through Belgium, gaining independence, kind of having that uncertainty, having that independence taken away from you again, and just that back and forth, and kind of the way the people were kind of yo-yoed up and down throughout history. So we are now 27 minutes into the podcast, and we haven't even talked about the book, so I feel a little bit bad. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of go over some of that. So what did you think overall of this book?
I love this book. Yeah. I do have, some, I don't know, criticisms. Yeah, some things that I think could have been done differently, or I maybe didn't like as much, but I do love this book. I think it's written beautifully. You feel like you're there, and it's just a crazy place to be.
Yeah.
I think I would not last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's just like a lot of powerful lessons, and I really like her writing. It is told through the 4 daughters' points of view, and there's there's only a couple chapters from the mom's point of view. There's like 4 different books in it, and she only has a chapter at the beginning of each book. But I thought she does an amazing job of giving each daughter and the mother a distinct voice. So you even if you forgot whose name was at the beginning, you knew who was talking, you knew whose point of view it was.
Did you like the multiple narratives? Because I usually hate it.
I liked it. I mean, there were some where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want, I definitely like some people's voices more than others. Rachel was like, oh my gosh.
Which one's Rachel?
The oldest one, who's 16 and
she's the blonde haired one.
Yeah.
Who's just over it.
Yeah. Just care. Which that would suck to be a 16-year-old girl and be moved there.
Yeah.
But she was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
I definitely usually in multi narrated books, I definitely like some narrators more than others, but I like hearing the different points of view and different experiences.
I will say that for anybody who's turned off by kind of a multi-narration book, books told from, the viewpoint of multiple different characters, this book's done very well for 3/4 of it.
Yeah.
The first 350, 400 pages of this book are narrated from multiple different perspectives, but it's a chronological story. So it's from the moment that they pack up and move out of Georgia to all the way to where they kind of spread as a family and kind of get split apart as a family in the Congo. It's just completely chronological. So although the narrators are changing, the story just moves along at the same pace always, which I really, really enjoyed. Because again, like you said, you get distinct perspectives from each person, but it also doesn't feel repetitive like some narrators do. And then it also isn't confusing because you're not jumping timelines or anything like that. Like it is one consecutive story for those first 350, 400 pages. The last 150-ish pages of the book are not like that. And that was my biggest gripe with the book, is that once they all split up, the split narrative continues, in which, and it just jumps from person to person to person to person continually.
But in between their chapters is 10 years.
10 years, and they're in completely different cities. They're experiencing completely different things. And I hated that section.
Yeah.
I still liked the story in that section, but I hated that part because I felt so confused. I didn't know how much time had elapsed. I didn't know what was going on with all the other sisters, with the mother, with the father. I didn't know anything that was going on because it was so disjointed that I feel like that, I don't know. If I could give the books 2 different ratings, I totally would, but I did not like that last portion of the book for that kind of writing style. I still like the story, but that writing style ruined that part of the story for me.
Yeah.
Was that the same for you? Yeah. And that was, for the majority of people on Goodreads, definitely one of their biggest gripes. I was reading a bunch of reviews on there, and a lot of people said, loved the first 350 pages, loved the first 350 pages. Couldn't get over those last little bit. And I would agree. That was an interesting choice.
I think it should have ended with the sister dying.
I agree. Yeah. I think it should have ended with the sister dying and then been done. And then maybe had
an epilogue.
An epilogue. And each sister could have had a what happened in their life.
Yeah, definitely.
Portion. And then it would have been a phenomenal book.
Yeah.
But it's that last little bit that gets me. So what would you say the major themes of this book were? Because I felt like the themes that I got out of the book were completely different than the themes that Goodreads got out of this book.
Let me look at my notes. I mean, themes or lessons?
Lessons, themes, ideas, all of the above. And then also, did you feel like it was almost too much of a lesson theme-based book for you? Because that was another thing that critics of the book have said, is that it kind of pushed too much of that anti-American, anti-Western involvement. It pushed a little bit too much into that.
I didn't think so. I thought it was anti-colonialism, in a necessary way. The way they were treated was not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I always think that
cutting off their limbs in the rubber factory, that's not okay.
I think people get a little bit too touchy with stories.
I was, Leanne said something a couple weeks ago that I loved, and she was saying how sad it is or how just some people don't have the ability to listen to other people's stories without feeling attacked. Because I've read negative reviews about this being anti-Christian. And I didn't think that at all.
No.
Yeah, and just some people can't listen to stories without feeling attacked. Exactly like she said. I thought that was such a good point.
Yeah, and if you are that type of person, I could see this being a very, I hate this word, but triggering book. You know what I mean? There are a lot of heavy topics in this book, And like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, I mean, it covers religion, it covers politics. I mean, those are generally two big taboos that you don't talk about. And this dives really deep into both of them, from a very personal story of this family that to me almost read like fiction or nonfiction. Sorry, read like nonfiction at this point. At, I don't know, like 150 pages in, I had to Google, like, is the Poisonwood Bible a real story? Because it really does read like a nonfiction story, like a memoir almost. And I could see that kind of triggering people who can't make that distinction, because there are definite bad people in this book. You know, like I don't think that, the author tried to make people good, like some people good at all. You know what I mean?
Like who?
Like Nathan. Like, I don't think that there is a redeeming quality to Nathan.
I don't know if there's a redeeming quality, but what's interesting is I hate a character that is like, sorry, let me start over. I like a bad character. Like, a morally complex character is always so interesting. But I don't like when they're just evil for no reason. Like, I feel like that's kind of rare to just be evil for no reason. But so Nathan, he might not have any redeeming qualities, but he has like a kind of a reason. Like, yeah. I mean, the mom, Orleanna, I don't know how to say her name.
Orleanna.
Yeah, Orleanna. So she talks about how before he was pretty religious. Before he fought in World War II, he was pretty religious. Like, he was already on that track, like all in. But then he goes and he fights in World War II, and he's in the Philippines, and his squad it gets attacked, and he is like knocked out by a bullet, or a shell or something hits him, and he's knocked out, and he wakes up in the hospital and finds out that his whole squadron was taken as prisoner of wars, and they were like all killed. And so he feels like guilty because he's the last one alive, and he feels like a coward. Like, he says that repeatedly, that like he doesn't want to be a coward. And that explains so many of his actions. Yeah. Like, he won't leave the Congo when it gets extremely dangerous, not just from nature for his family. Like, it gets dangerous politically for his family, and he won't leave because he doesn't want God to see him as a coward. He doesn't want to be the last alive again.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I think from a motivational standpoint, I can understand Nathan. But one thing, if I did have to add any of my own criticisms to it, would be I like characters that you can almost sympathize with. And I didn't feel like I could sympathize, although I could understand like his...
Yeah, definitely can't sympathize.
His point of view. I felt like there was nothing redeemable that made me like Nathan. Because I like a bad character. I like bad characters that you can also kind of like too.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, and although I didn't love this book, the more I think about it, the more I like it. Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov, the main character, although you don't approve of the fact that he's a murderer, you do also kind of like him. You know what I mean? And he makes for a very complex character because of that.
Yeah.
And Nathan, I felt like didn't have that little bit of likability in it.
Yeah, for sure.
That made you kind of want to root for him, but also not. The entire time, I wanted Nathan's head to appear on a spike in front of the village. So because of that,
when they show up first and they have this welcome feast for them, and they've killed a goat, which is huge because they don't have any food. They killed a goat for them, and women there are just topless. That's how they are. It's cultural. Not a big deal. Yeah. It's not a big deal at all. And he gets up and gives a sermon about how nakedness is a sin. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I wanted to die.
And the entire time I was kind of waiting for him to be at the very beginning, I was waiting for him to be, maybe a good husband. No.
Oh no.
He beats his wife.
And his kids.
Yeah. Wanting him to be a good dad. No, he's abusive, both mentally, spiritually, and physically.
Yeah.
And I felt like him as a character, the one dimension that he was missing was just a morsel of good. I know that he was understandable, but I also kind of wanted him to be almost a little bit relatable too.
For sure, yeah.
So that was my only negative thing. And I felt like also the Belgians, or basically colonists in general, were also kind of painted in that light. Like there was never any like slightly redeemable quality ever attributed to them throughout the book. And although, I mean, after reading through the history of the Congo, there really isn't a whole lot of redeemable qualities given to the fact that that a person owned the entire place and that, killed half the population. The United States basically said you're on your own until communism came in and then assassinated their leader. All of that bad. But throughout all of that, like there had to have been good influences there too. You know what I mean? Like there was definitely an influence of, increased, medical support. There's always been, a huge.
There's the doctor.
There is the doctor in there as well, but even the doctor talks poorly against colonization. Yes. Oh. I remember that today. I mean, even the doctor like hated Belgians and all that kind of stuff.
He was Belgian.
Yes. But he did. No, he was French.
Oh.
So I don't know. I felt like there was just a little bit of like a one dimension kind of to all of the villains in the book.
Yeah.
Whereas all of the other characters, I felt like were very multi-dimensional. Like you liked parts, like the mom, Orleanna, you liked things about her. You didn't like things about her. She was very complex. All of the daughters were very complex. The villains just weren't, though, in my opinion. Yeah. They were very black and white, which, I don't know, for me personally, didn't detract from the story, but I can understand why people would feel attacked because of that.
Yeah. I don't know.
So.
I can see that.
But what did you think about, the two biggest messages that I got from the book were definitely kind of the colonialization, that whole side of things, the influence of white people bad into the Congo. And then the other one was kind of the religious message from, the perspective of the father. Mm-hmm. What did you think about each of those messages? Did you feel attacked with either of those?
No.
Okay.
Again, like you can listen to someone else's story without feeling attacked.
Yeah.
And learning a lesson.
So what was the lesson to be learned from the father and religion in general?
Well, so that lesson, it's something that Brother Fowles says. He was the minister that was there before the Price family, but he got kicked out because he got in trouble for what was the phrase they use?
Consorting?
With the tribe members.
He took to wife one of the tribe members, and that
sounded like it might have been more, but
yeah, it was.
But he did get married to one of them.
Yeah, it was frowned upon by the missionary group that.
So he kind of got kicked out.
Yeah.
Of his role. But he still lives there, like with his wife and his kids, and they live on a boat.
Yep, upriver.
Yeah. So, but they come to visit, and he says to the mom or somebody, he says, there are Christians and then there are Christians. And that's like the biggest lesson. Like they're just the biggest contrast between him, who is a Christian, but he still like retains his own religion and beliefs, but he loves like this tribe and he respects their beliefs and their culture. And, he tries to bring a good influence in and help them, but he doesn't try to change them. And he doesn't sit there and call them sinners and tell them they're all going to hell because they don't believe exactly what he believes. And then the contrast with Nathan, who, gets up there and tells them nakedness is a sin and won't stop trying to baptize their kids in crocodile-infested waters. And when there's a downpour, he walks around baptizing kids, which was wild. So just the contrast between those two and kind of see like the softer service, caring side of religion, and then the angry side of religion, and the damage that's done with that, not only to the people that he's claiming to help, but to his own family.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people around the world, and I lived in Germany for a couple of years, and I definitely saw a lot of people that I feel like could relate a little bit to that side of religion a little bit. Kind of we'll call it what's their last name? Price. The Nathan Price side of religion and Christianity specifically in this book, which was, I don't know. In my eyes, it was more of the kind of the letter of the law Christianity, in which, his main focus was, I don't know, almost wielding religion as a tool for...
I was going to say, he uses religion to control people.
Yeah, to control, to oppress, or to prove a point, I think, in his own life.
To scare people into doing what he wants.
And to prove to himself that he's not a coward and that he's worth something, and he does that both to the Congolese people, to his family.
Yeah, he uses fear, and because I remember I have a note. They had a bout of, I think, dysentery, and a bunch of kids died in the village, and he walked around and told everybody how their babies weren't going to heaven because they weren't baptized.
Yeah.
That side of Christianity.
Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of people that could probably relate to that. And when reading this book, I'm sure, heck, I could relate to that in some manner. You know what I mean? Maybe not the extreme side of Nathan Price, but definitely, know people, have seen people who use religion as and religious beliefs is kind of the hard end all be all of, I don't know, of worthiness, if that makes sense. And that anybody who doesn't measure up to that line is seen as inferior. And he definitely has that complex the entire time. And what ends up happening is the Congolese people hate him.
Yeah.
Hate him. And ultimately the message that he's trying to spread is not a bad one. Love your neighbor, treat people that's
I don't think he never
I guess he never spread that message. But that's
the only message he ever spreads is you have to come get baptized in this crocodile infested water, and nakedness is a sin, and worldliness is a sin. The only message he never shares a message about love. It's all about sin.
Yeah, I guess it's the focus. I guess, if you look at the two of them, so contrast the two of them, I guess. You have Nathan Price, who spreads a message of
fear and sin.
What you can and cannot do to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And he's obsessed with kind of that of entering into the kingdom of heaven. That's his whole obsession, right?
And not being a coward.
And who's going to get to heaven and what you have to do to get there. So you can't sin, you can't do this, you can't do this, you have to do this, you can't do this.
But you can beat your wife.
You can do everything as long as you're baptized.
And you don't cuss.
You can beat your wife, you can do whatever you want. And
if it's in the name of religion.
Yeah, if it's in the name of the religion. And then on the flip side, you had Brother Fowles, who was, in my opinion, not at all obsessed with where he's going to end up. Well, yeah, he swears, but he's also not at all. I loved when he talked about the leader of the village and how Nathan talks about how much he hates the leader of the village because he's a roadblock to the members of the village getting to heaven. He's constantly keeping members of the village away from his message, which is going to get them to heaven. And he's like, did you like him? And Brother Fowles is like, yeah, I liked him. And he talks about how, although he didn't convert to Christianity, he's like, I was able to sit with him and teach him about how to treat women.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he moved, and he's like, by the time I was done with him, he was nice and polite to all of his wives.
Yeah.
And he lived a polygamous life, and both of them could agree that that wasn't very good. But Brother Fowles saw kind of, instead of the end goal of, this leader has to give up all his sins, otherwise he's going to hell. Mm-hmm. Brother Fowles saw, like, I'm going to teach him how to be more Christ-like. And that was just such a huge contrast to me between the two of them.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just goes to show, I think, kind of the way in which you can use religion around others. And, and when other people say that they've had poor experiences with religion, I can definitely see why, because the same exact book, the same exact, theoretical teachings could be used to pull two completely different messages, two completely different experiences for these people. Just depends on what you prioritize within your, I guess, teachings of salvation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I thought although it was definitely critical of the Nathan side of teachings, I thought it was very, what's the word? Not critical. Very favorable. Like, shed a very favorable light towards the teachings of Brother Fowles and the impact that he had on others, the impact that he had on the village, and just the general amount of people that liked him, and the impact that he had on everybody that came across him in the story. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else to add about that?
No, that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. Any thoughts on kind of the white man bad side of the book?
Sounds racist. I should not have said that.
It is kind of the theme of that book, that part of the book.
I don't know. I don't think it's a new message.
No. And I also don't think that they beat it over the head in the book.
No, I don't think at all. I agree. It was bad.
It was bad. Like, reading through the history of the Congo.
I was mortified when I heard that Eisenhower sent the order to kill their first president. My gosh.
Yeah. And I don't know.
I just kind of, they're different, like the religion and the political side, but they kind of seem to follow a similar path there, as it was like the destruction that the war on Satan brought and the war on communism brought. You're taking it too far and the damage that it does.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's good.
So I don't think it was a new lesson. I don't think it was beat over the head. I think it's important to learn these things and to not repeat them.
Yeah. It's so hard for me, though, because on one side of things, I'm like, yeah, the U.S. assassinating the then democratically elected president of the Congo, really, really bad, right? On the flip side of things, I just got done reading the First They Killed My Father. Mm. And then you hear about
communism.
Like what communism did to Cambodia. And you're like, man, you just don't know. And that's the thing about history, is that you don't know what could have been.
Yeah.
What could have happened from a communist leader within the Congo.
Was he actually talking to the Soviet Union? I thought they said it was just a bluff because he's just trying to get the U.S. to help him.
No, the Soviet Union sent military and supplies and advisors to the Congo to help them keep the Congo from seceding into different groups. So it was basically like a way for them to, get the resources and training that they needed to keep everybody unified under the Congo. And so there definitely were, and if I'm thinking about it strategically from the Soviet Union side of things, Soviet Union didn't send troops and advisors out of the goodwill of their heart. You know what I mean? There was definitely a motive, and the motive of the Soviet Union was to spread communism. They tried to do that across the entire world. So I mean, I understand a little bit from the U.S. perspective of kind of this fear of communism because, again, communism killed, what was it, like, it was 3.5 million people in Cambodia, 6 million or 5 million people in the Soviet Union itself. China was another, I don't know, million, couple, I mean, I want to say like 8 million people. I don't know. It was a lot. So, like, I don't know. It's very complex. And you can always go and look at history and be like, you know, these people were wrong because they did this and this and this, but you never know what could have been had that never happened. But from the perspective of the Congolese, I can see why that would not be okay. And so that's why, like, reading this book, I never felt like the message of...
Sorry, keep going.
I was just going to say, that's why while reading this book, I never felt like it was a bad message because it was told from this perspective of people who lived in the Congo throughout all of this. So their perspective is going to be so much different from the U.S. perspective, looking at it in 2024. You know what I mean? So somebody reading this book and being like, well, this book's trash because, you know, it just paints us in a bad light. I'm sure in 1960, the people of the Congo did look at us in a bad light. You know what I mean? And it's okay that they did. You can't get offended by the way that other people view you throughout history. But it is the way that it is. And so I think it's important to understand where their perspectives come from so you can empathize with them, maybe even if you don't agree with them. I think that's almost more important, is the empathy that you can gain when you don't agree with somebody versus every book that you read just having the same opinion that you do, that we had to be there. We had to do that. We were fighting communism. That was a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it was a good thing, maybe it wasn't. But I can still empathize with the people who thought we were doing bad.
Yeah, for sure. What I was going to say is what I think I found, like, so upsetting about, like, the U.S. doing that was the fact that, like you said, they were given their country back with no education or training of any sort. And they were like, hey, can I get some help? And the U.S. is just, that's how they intervene.
See ya, it's your problem.
That's what was kind of upsetting was they were just kind of dumped on their heads, given this country, and then
the Soviet Union steps in, and then we're like, okay, now we have to get involved. It's kind of like
they're not trusted to run their own country for a long time.
Yeah. And
even just like they're asking for help, and I mean, you can't help everyone, but I don't know. It's complex, and
it is, and it's so hard because again, like you said, you can't help everyone. But at the same time, I feel like that could have been a situation in which I feel like we only ever help when people need to be killed. You know what I mean? Like the U.S. gets involved when
to stop communism,
when soldiers need to be on the ground, or you know what I mean, or we need to ship millions, or like right now, like who are we involved with? We're involved with Ukraine and Israel, and we're shipping unbelievable amounts of money over to them so that they can buy more weapons.
Yeah.
When in actuality, like a situation like
just some training and education and support
would have gone a long way.
Yeah.
You know, like at that point when they first had their first, elections and democracy, what they didn't need guns.
No.
What they needed was, like you said, education, training, support,
medical support,
infrastructure support, just general governance support. But that's when we weren't there.
Housing, because these people's basic needs aren't being met. And so when somebody comes in saying, oh, we'll help you, they're like, done. Yeah. Like, I want a house. I want to be able to feed my kids.
But that's not the stuff that I feel like as a country we ever focus on. Again, we focus on the times when we can
buy guns.
When we can buy guns and missiles, and it's crazy because there's starving people everywhere, and we're still to this day sending billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to people to buy missiles. Yeah. And I
think that's just what I found upsetting. And I didn't think it was beat over the head. I thought it was an important, and not that even she was beating a message over somebody's head. This is an historical event.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's told from the perspective of somebody who loves the people of the Congo. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like it's told from the perspective of somebody who, in essence, spent their formative years living in this country. So when they had to choose between America and the Congo,
and most of the political stuff, I think all of the political stuff was told from Leah's point of view, and she ends up marrying somebody from the Congo, and she stays there. So definitely she became a part of that society. So
her opinion is going to be vastly
Yeah.
different from anybody else's.
Definitely.
And again, that's okay. Even if she's wrong and you don't agree with her perspective, it's important just to have empathy for how somebody got to that point.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she watched her husband get thrown in prison multiple times. She watched a country that she loved be, you know, taken over and then be given freedom and then taken over again and then given freedom. You know what I mean? Like that is going to give somebody a jaded perspective, regardless of whether or not it was a good thing or a bad thing. Again, that perspective that she gained through those experiences is valid for her herself. And so you can have empathy with that while still disagreeing with it. And I think that's where most of the 1-star reviews from Goodreads, I felt short, as they were just like, no, this is garbage, like propaganda. And I was just like, you can have,
I don't think so at all.
you can have a little empathy. I mean, again, it's a fictional story, but I think that there's a lot to learn from fiction.
The propaganda is historical events.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't either. So I didn't get that vibe from it at all.
No, not at all.
So, and yeah, I didn't get the anti-Christian vibe from it at all.
I got the be a good Christian vibe.
Yeah. And like the anti,
or whatever religion
yeah.
you choose. Like,
Yeah. And
as long as you're not harming others. Like,
well, and again, it's the way that you use religion.
Yeah.
Like, are you using religion for control, or are you using religion in the, I don't know, almost to justify things as well? You know, I felt like Nathan justified a lot because of his religion. He was the pastor, so he had all this power to judge people.
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? He was living righteously, so he could judge. Yeah. So if you're not doing that, I mean, there was a lot of positive in religion as well. So overall, or anything else from the book that you'd like to share?
I mean, I got some different messages reading it as like a mother with daughters versus reading it in high school.
Okay.
Just, and there was some, just I really felt for, or why can't I say her name? I'm turning into you.
Orleanna.
Like trying to keep her daughters alive there. Like, yeah, one of them ends up dying. Like, I mean, they tell you that at the beginning, so that's not a spoiler. I won't say which one, but just trying to keep her daughters alive there. Like, I just felt for her, and just, you know, she had different relationships with each one, and that was kind of sad. And I don't want to treat my daughters differently. Like, during the ant attack, which is horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather be eaten by a lion than attacked by giant ants. Like, Ada is left behind. She like watches her mom choose another daughter to carry, and Ada has a limp. Like, that was heartbreaking. Like, how do you choose which daughter to pick up? Like, and I don't know if I learned a lesson, or it just made me think and just made me sad.
Yeah.
And what just blew my mind this time is when one of her daughters dies, that's when she's snaps and is like, I'm done. And she leaves, and she doesn't even take her other daughters. They just follow her. And she ends up going back to America with one daughter, and she leaves her other two. She leaves one of them, who's really sick, with the man she ends up marrying, but like, she didn't know him. He could have been a bad man. He actually ends up being a good man. But then she leaves her other daughter with a man who she knows is bad, and he is a bad man.
Yeah.
And he's like 15 years older than her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can whatever, but I was like, what? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, she's grieving, so, because her other daughter just died. It's like, I can't judge her, but I'm judging her. Like, how do you just leave especially after one of them's died? Wouldn't you want to keep them all as close to you as possible? That's because I don't know. I don't know if I learned a lesson or it just
That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
hurt me.
I felt like the mom was that complex character. Like there were things that she did that drove me absolutely crazy. And then there were other times in the book that I just felt like she was awesome.
Yeah.
And Nathan was never that.
No.
So
I guess that wasn't really a answer. I didn't learn a lesson. I'm still thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from the mom.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to learn about what not to do, where to draw lines. You know what I mean? I don't know. Nathan was the freaking worst.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, kind of what she endured and what she allowed her daughters to endure. And then, like you said,
If you were like, we're going to the Congo to be ministers, I'd say, send me a postcard. No.
Yeah, seriously.
Especially our children. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Crazy story. Yeah. But what would you rank this book on a scale of 1 to 5 for what'd you call it? Engagement? Engaging, and 1 to 5 for importance.
For engaging, I give it a 4 just because of the last third or fourth or whatever of it. Just knocks it off. That whole last part. I was skimming so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And for importance, I give it probably a 5. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of important aspects of history to be learned about and a lot of important lessons. And just I think when it can make you, sometimes when it doesn't spoon feed you a message, it makes you think, I think can be equally important.
Yeah. I think I'd agree 100%. 4 and 5 is what I think I'd give it. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think I would give the first section, the first 350 pages, a 5 and 5. Mm-hmm. And then the last 150 pages, a 2 and a 5.
Yeah.
Which then comes out to be a 4 and a 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think, the first, until they all get separated, I was glued to the book.
Yeah.
Like it was so good. After that, it was difficult to follow, which made it a little bit harder to get through. But again, the message I think is good. Learning pieces of history, always good. Pieces of history about places that you never knew anything about is good. I think the kind of introspective look at religion is also good for those that are religious and maybe for those that maybe are a little bit hurt by religion. I feel like there's a lot of that nowadays. Mm-hmm. Just understanding why you are hurt and why maybe others aren't. Everybody has a different experience with religion. You may have the Nathan Price experience of religion, and you may have the brother, whatever, I can't remember his name. Brother Fowles experience with religion. And that could completely change the way that you experience religion, regardless of which way it is. And so I think being able to introspectively look at that as an individual and how you live your religion, or maybe why you are, maybe why you were hurt by religion and why maybe so many people are angry, I think is also good, because a lot of times it's not the teachings itself, but it's the person kind of wielding it. Mm-hmm. I think that's an important message. So, but yeah, I'd give it a 4 and a 5 overall. I really did love this book. Mm-hmm. I would highly recommend it. And honestly, it would be a 5 and a 5. It would be one of my favorite reads of the year if it wasn't for that last little bit of the book.
Yeah.
And that being said, I might be a little bit too harsh on that last little bit of the book. Like it was all right.
Yeah.
I
felt the same way.
But it just didn't live up to the caliber that was set before it. So it felt like a letdown. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So still highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Definitely. So thank you for being on this episode of the podcast. What's the next book we're reading together? Do you know? Have we picked one?
I don't know.
We'll have to pick one.
I think I was going to do Demon Copperhead later, but
I'm excited for that one after reading this one. I didn't know that they were written by the same
Heather
person.
said it's difficult.
Difficult.
Like tough content.
Oh. We'll have to see.
It's about opioid.
Yeah, that could be difficult.
Yeah.
So, excited for it though. And for those of you who are still listening, make sure that you like, comment your thoughts on this book if you've read it. And if you haven't read it, comment on whether or not this podcast episode made you want to read it or not.
Don't comment that.
Comment what you love about Olivia on the podcast, because she's always so worried that people don't like her on the podcast.
I feel like I sound mean.
No.
Because that's how we talk to each other.
I feel like we're good this time though. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure that you like, comment, or not like, comment, that you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. That really helps. And we'll see you next week on the podcast. Next week's episode is the autobiography of Malcolm X. Super excited actually for that one. I know literally nothing about Malcolm X, which is really sad. I know a lot about Martin Luther King Jr., nothing about Malcolm X. And so I'm actually very excited to kind of learn about that. I feel like he's a very influential individual in American history. So excited to learn what I can about him and bring it to the podcast next week. So read along if you're interested, or tune in next week for the episode and learn a little bit about Malcolm X in American history. See you next time.